So let's start with this question that came across in a lot of different ways. What has changed in your marketing team as a result of the current situation? So that you can interpret that however you'd like. But Simon, I'd like to start with you. Just we had a quick chat about this before we went live. Maybe you could just tell us how you think about this.
Yeah, sure. So I think the right place to start is with the team, and I think it's now been quite a few weeks where there has been, some degree of change that has become more and more intense. But I would say the biggest change, obviously, which I think I probably share with most, if not all, of the viewers, is that we have gone to a fully remote setup, which is not something we're used to. We are quite a big independent marketing team here in Thailand, more than 20 people actually working on marketing and e-commerce. And we are used to being near each other, right? And so suddenly going to a place where first half the team was working from home in rotations and then to full work from home and various different nuances there from day to day and week to week, it's definitely been a change. And for me, it's actually been quite encouraging to see that as long as everyone has been following my little rule of keeping their video cameras on when we are on Zoom calls, we can actually, I think, still coordinate pretty effectively. I normally hate Slack. Like, I hate Slack. I love email, and Slack for me just feels most of the time like people jumping the queue. And I have now become a Slack lover as well. So it's fitting much better into my current workflow. So from a team standpoint, I think it's been less painful than I feared so far. But I also think we have to keep at it because it's still a new kind of an interesting new thing to adapt to. But soon it will just be the normal. I think we will stay like this for many weeks.
For sure. I think it's a great point that, you mentioned that you have all these tools already. So I think we are way ahead of the curve on remote because you know what Slack is. When I was chatting with a few people who aren't in tech, they're like, just emails and Skype. And I'm like, Skype? I haven't said that word in so long. So there's all these companies that I think are catching up and are having a hard time dealing with all this kind of stuff. So I think we're just recognizing we're very lucky there. Tim, same thing for you.
I think Slack SEO has recently tweeted that they're seeing a huge adoption curve of their software. A lot of people are jumping in, creating new workspaces and such. So yeah, the world is jumping onto Slack because it's actually a great tool if you know how to use it. It can be very distracting. You can procrastinate there a lot. But yeah, for remote work, it is amazing. I don't think there's anything better than Slack for team collaboration, for real-time team collaboration, because there's Basecamp, there's Notion. For example, we keep most of our documentation, the stuff that we want to refer to, like a wiki, like internal Wikipedia, we have it in Notion. And for from my end, what I'm seeing, because I'm not into development, because the guys have Git and all this stuff like this. Yeah. But for project stuff, we have Basecamp, and other than Basecamp, there's Asana. So plenty of options for people to research. And yeah, for us, the majority of our marketing team is actually remote already. So these people have some healthy habits in terms of working from home. I am one of these people who used to work in the office, and now I'm working from home, and this is quite an experience for me. And one amazing piece of advice that I've seen from someone again on Twitter is that try to not break your routine. So the stuff that you're doing in the morning before you go to the office, try to stick to it the same way you did it before. Because I've noticed with myself, so usually when I wake up, I read a little bit, I do a small workout, I shower, I eat food, and then I go to the office. So what I realized is that when in the morning I would skip that routine and I would just take my computer, answer for a few emails, the whole day from there goes bananas. Yeah. The productivity would be on and off. But when I keep that routine as if I'm going to go to the office, my day looks more or less the same as the regular day in the office. So yeah, another piece of advice he said is that have a dedicated space for work, which is kind of obvious. But again, some people would take their notebook and go sit on the couch, then go sit outside or whatever. Yeah. But if you have a dedicated room or even a dedicated table, and this is where work happens, and as soon as you take your notebook off the table and you go somewhere else, you shouldn't consider this working, because most of the time, when I look at myself, I cannot really be seriously productive when I'm on the couch. I can answer a few emails, but I cannot get in the flow state to be able to write an article or do any work that requires a lot of brain power. So these two pieces of advice are something that I'm trying to work on myself. So retain my morning habits and work at a specific place in my apartment.
It's amazing how the first 20 minutes of your day, what you choose to do with that, has such an outsized impact on the rest of the day. And I think a lot of people are made fun of all the productivity nuts before, but now they're like, oh, maybe they were onto something with all this journaling stuff and meditation is to start your day and all that kind of stuff. Can you guys talk through about the marketing implications? So we talked about some of the team stuff, right? what changed when it all started really kicking off? Simon, maybe I'll start with you on that.
So I think there are different stages. So the first was kind of seeing it coming a little bit and trying to size it. And we are a global business with a very large footprint in China. And so we were obviously very concerned about what was happening up there, primarily with respect to all of the teams that we have in stores. We have more than 200 stores across mainland China and also some of the territories outside. And I think for the first couple of weeks, it's funny because it's kind of a fog already, right? Like back then it was like, this is a China thing. We have to limit our exposure to China. It's about your China travel history, all these different things. We started canceling some trips and canceling some conferences and things like that. And then suddenly now it's kind of like a global phenomenon already. So I think for us, first, it was a bit of a wait and see approach because obviously we have a global business to maintain. And so we wanted to be prudent already back then. And now it's very much become a situation for us directly as well, with our stores in Thailand, for example, being closed at the moment. The first thing we've seen is obviously having to adjust to that picture. And I think my stance so far has basically been, I'm sure I'm head of marketing, but at the end of the day, I work for a CEO, or I work for a GM. And at this point, my first priority will be how to best support them in whatever strategy and whatever preparedness they want to make. Yeah. So rather than like fighting too much, like decreases on budgets and cuts on budgets and things like that, I think my stance has been, okay, let me do what you ask and maybe more. Because if your view is that we need to have as much flexibility as possible, then let me not be the one to slow that down. And since marketing is obviously one of the big it's a big expense line. It's where a lot of cash flows through. I think it's only fair that we really do our part to give the business as much flexibility as we can while we figure out what this is, because who knows, right? I think it's still early days.
So it sounds like a big change that happened there is, instead of thinking of yourself as a marketing person, you're just like, I'm here to support the business. And if that means being flexible around the budget that I have to support the business, I will do that. So it sounds like you made that shift in your mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I always try to think about like my role as basically, let's call it resource allocation, kind of almost a portfolio management, but where budget is only one of them. There are two other groups for me. One is the people you have in your team and their time and focus. And then there is all of your own platforms and basically the scarce resource that is, let's say, the focus of your existing customers or your existing CRM, or even thinking about number of placements you have. And so you can't send 14 EDMs a week, right? So you have a certain amount of space or placements inventory. So those three groups of budget, people, and inventory, I try to think about always, how can the budget best service the other two? How can the people best service the budget and the placements? And now that we have less budget, then we need to think about, wait, what are the people resources? Suddenly there's some time freed up. Could that be spent on activities that more directly contribute to the own platforms or maybe build long-term value? SEO is actually a great topic for this time, but I just try and think about it as I had those three groups of resources. Now they've shifted a bit. So what's the new equilibrium?
Yeah, it's like resource allocation. That's the way you're thinking about it for business impact. That's great. Yeah. Tim, how does it affect your marketing? How do you think about the changes and translating that into what affects your day-to-day?
So interestingly, I don't yet probably feel any difference in our marketing because we don't really have budgets. We don't spend a lot of money on marketing. We do like inbound marketing, which is what HubSpot, I believe HubSpot has invented the term inbound marketing. So yeah, well, it is basically SEO. We create content, people find it in Google, people find it in YouTube, and people come to us. So basically our main marketing expense is salaries of people in the marketing department, and we're not letting anyone go. So the situation is so far bearable. Luckily, we don't need to fire anyone. So our marketing works more or less in the same way as it used to work all the time. We keep creating content. People keep writing articles, creating videos. So yeah, not much of a change here. And I think this is the beauty of relying on inbound marketing. And this is the beauty of having a certain amount of content that was created by our team to date, because all that content now works for us without us having to do anything. So I think we are in a lucky situation for two reasons. First of all, we're in a business that actually has search demand, because in certain businesses, people just don't search for the things that you offer. You have to come to them. You have to buy advertising. So this is the first thing. And the second thing is that for the past 5 years, we were actively building our content database so that we would get a lot of traffic coming in. Yeah, right now, it just we're in a good position.
I think HubSpot is kind of the same way. So we have a blog that is just a juggernaut, right? So Tim, I think we benefit from having this past foundation of all this traffic. What would you propose to people who are like, oh, we don't have that, and now I'm the head of marketing at a company, and I do need to get onto content. I feel like SEO is the thing that I need to prioritize now. What is your advice to them? Is it just write as fast as possible, like get as many content out as possible? What would you say to them?
Well, so one piece of advice that is worth at least trying is that if you're paying for ads in Google for certain like keywords related to your product, what you can try doing is you're probably paying for like buying intent keywords. For example, buy LG TV, blah, blah, blah. So what you can do instead is you can search for some like top level or middle of the funnel keywords like best TV reviews or like best OLED TV or whatever, and go to people who rank in the first 3 positions, reach out to them and like see if you can strike some kind of deal with them where they would mention on your page. In other words, like to simplify what I just said, if you don't have any content of your own, which would funnel people towards your business, try to see who owns that content in your industry, who owns the middle of the funnel content and top of the funnel content, and go to them and see if you can like probably making a deal with them might even be cheaper than what you're paying for your ads for like bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
So this is like the first advice that I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like one of the things that I keep coming back to is you don't necessarily need to ramp up content in a short amount of time. Like there's other things you can do to get in front of the target audience you're after. So strategic partnerships, I think, has a huge value right now, and people thinking outside of the box and how we can partner with other teams who have the same audience we have, adding value to them. Like you said, maybe it's an affiliate thing, or it's just, I don't know, long-term relationship building. That's one of the ways you can adjust, I guess, your marketing. Simon, is that something that comes up in your world? Like, I'm guessing footfall is down, traffic is down. Do you think about offsetting that?
I mean, I think we are fortunate among retailers that we have such a strong e-commerce presence, and it's something we've been working at for several years. Going one layer deeper into that, I think our content strategy has kind of two legs online. One is just your structural SEO to product, brand, category pages, homepage, and so on. We are helped tremendously by the fact that our brand is so huge, right? So just the amount of organic mentions is quite significant, and we have significant efforts in KOL influencer marketing that helps accelerate that a bit. The other part that we have had for a while and now continue to strengthen a bit more is a more editorial content universe under the name Beauty Feed. And that's where we are trying to figure out now, like how to strike the right balance between what the media types that the audience wants to see and what we can tangibly see SEO benefits from. So for example, text content versus video content. 2 different games, right? One on text, we know pretty much how that works in terms of generating rankings long-term. Video is a totally different game where you have sort of a meta SEO game inside YouTube. And then you also have some potential to rank the landing pages where that video is present in your own site. So that's it, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's on our top 3 channels.
Got it. Okay.
Simon, I wanted to ask you, what about influencer marketing? Do you do have any partnerships with like Instagram models or whatever, so that they would like promote some products or some deals? I don't know. What's happening there?
I think, so at the end of the day, the company is about creating and fostering beauty community. And a huge part of that is the democratization of influencers from decade to decade. I mean, it used to be the editors of Vogue magazine or whatever. Now this power is in the hands of hundreds of KOLs, between these mega ones that are almost celebrities and then down to the micro ones. We work with hundreds every month, hundreds. We try to work with them across all levels. So we would have more strategic partnerships with the very big ones, and then we would do product seeding to the slightly smaller ones. And in the middle of that, we have our usually 2 annual press days, which are physical events where we show all the new products. And there we try to invite literally hundreds. And one of the first impacts of the virus was, unfortunately, very early on, I think we made the right, very cautious call to call that off in the middle of February. And we had to find a way to make that virtual instead. So it's become about shipping these items to the influencers. And I would say largely they have been extremely supportive in finding ways of creating their own content instead of coming to a universe that we were curating in a physical space. So it's a big part for us, but I wouldn't say we try to think about it more than just money for reviews or something like that. It's really at the core of how the company operates is this idea of beauty community, and they are an important stakeholder in that community, just like customers and brands.
Got it. So my naive way of thinking about that is like, okay, I'm not in this world at all, so correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm a beauty brand, I'm just like, I need to have a cost per influencer, or I think about it at that mechanical level. But you guys are just like, no, it's part of the culture. And so it's not necessarily we pay influencers, we want to enable them and really make them feel like they're part of the community. Is that how you guys think about it?
Yeah, as much as possible, right? I mean, it sounds very light and airy and beautiful, right? There's obviously, at the end of the day, it's a business too. But I think what's really important to consider there is that if you are an influencer, you can maybe get some following with some strange tactics in the beginning, but the only way to have lasting power is to have the trust of your audience. For example, we see that generally the influencers that can sustain their following year to year in our space are makeup artists, because they have the expertise of the craft. And if you're a makeup artist, maybe you can do a paid endorsement for kind of a dubious product here and there. But more important for you is you want your hands on the right product before your audience can. And our entire business for decades has been to have the best possible selection. So by virtue of us having those brands, very often it's just about putting them in the hands of these makeup artists and influencers, because that builds their credibility as well.
Yeah.
So it's a huge ecosystem, but I think we try to be as close to it as we can. A combination of, in normal times, physical meetups and stuff that you can do through virtual means. And I mean, just tangibly in my team, we have a couple of people who would qualify as influencers in their own right. So it's just also, it's close to beauty enthusiasts, which are some of the people that we love to have part of the team.
Okay, but can you, because we're talking about the current situation, can you share like what changed? Because, for example, the way I look at it, so like you say, you don't necessarily pay specifically to someone to promote your product because they kind of do it naturally and all that. But still, for example, when you launch some kind of new product, you want to create like buzz around it. You have to like make sure that it's like when book authors try to squeeze as many interviews as they can in a limited amount of time, so that a lot of people would hear about their book, like make sales, make it like top seller, blah blah blah. So you have to like think about these things. So I'm sure you kind of, in some way, maybe payment or not, you have to ask like influencers to post, I don't know, reviews and stories, or like pictures with your product or whatever, doesn't matter. So I have two questions. The first one is, because right now, I believe influencers should be suffering from the situation as well, because I don't think the number of requests to promote stuff to influencers goes up. I think it just goes down because like businesses are cutting their costs. So they probably trim the money they spend on influencers promoting them in Instagram stories and whatnot. So this is the first thing, if you see that you can more easily negotiate with influencers as of today. And the second thing, because there's less competition, there's less products to promote. So for example, I have a friend in Ukraine who is kind of Instagram blogger. So he has 200,000 followers. And what I'm seeing is that on one day, he would be promoting 3 to 4 different products in his stories. So like if you open his Instagram stories, it would be a ton of like videos with like different products and blah, blah, blah. On other days, he would promote just one. So I believe like the further your product is in the story, so if your product is in the story number 10 of the day, a lot of people won't get to it. But if your product is in the story number 3, a lot of people. So what I'm saying is that because less businesses can right now go to influencers and order advertising, there should be less advertising, and probably the ROI is higher. So I'm interested like what's happening in the influencer marketing right now, like from what you're seeing.
Yeah, no, but those are great questions. So I think a couple of points. The first is that I think actually most influencers, again, and I see mostly just the consumer space, beauty and a few other adjacent lines. But what I see is that the influencers are actually already kind of, they're already fairly well aligned with e-commerce. So for the retailers or brands that have both an online and an offline business, they were already kind of like, the influencers were driving most tangible value for the e-commerce business. And that's where the budgets have stayed generally. In some cases, they've even increased over there. So actually, I think they are slightly more insulated from it than many other types of marketing. They would not, I think, be among the first costs to cut for omni-channel brands. There would be other marketing lines where we would say that is clearly about B&M stores. That's not going to be for right now, and we would probably seek to cut those first. The second is I can see they're very, very quick to adapt. So you'll see, if, for example, in my market here in Thailand, suddenly live streaming shopping events for platforms like Lazada and Shopee is like, boom, off the charts. And that's sort of multi-hour commitments for the influencers, but also something they're generally very good at, this direct selling approach. We had heard about live streaming for the longest time. It had been a feature on Lazada for at least a year, with some sporadic success here and there. Now it's just blowing up. So I think actually what's happening is this situation is just speeding up that innovation adoption curve a little bit. And I can see a lot of the influencers sort of trying to do more over there. Now, on the point around like, how do you stand out between like with influencers that just promote a whole lot of stuff? That is a very real question. But this, again, I would come back to the question about staying power. The ones that promote a whole lot of different stuff generally tend to lose a little bit of steam on the audience side, and I think also on the advertiser side. So the ones that I see that have, again, that staying power year for year are actually the ones that manage to curate that quite well. So I don't see that much. Like one thing that comes to my mind actually from mostly when I was in Singapore is you sometimes have influencers who, like, they've been on a trip, for example, and they come back home and then they do a story where they show all the parcels they've gotten from different brands. And I always think to myself, oh, I hope we don't have one of those bags, because it's just so much stuff. Like, how do we stand out there? But I think by having been in that game for so many years, I think, we try and think about it like 1 or 2 levels deeper than that. But it's certainly changing. I think the live streaming will be a real hit the next few months.
So yeah, another thought I just had is because like a lot of people have to stay at home right now and like limit their like visits to bars or shops or whatever. They are on social networks, which means that the views that those influencers are getting should go up. So other than having less competition, less businesses having money to promote their stuff and pay to influencers, the views should go up. So probably for businesses who are working, who buy advertising from influencers, it actually makes sense to invest at this time, because they would be among the few who are like buying those advertisements, and people are like at home bored watching like scrolling social networks, and they will see their product.
It depends though, right? Like it can't just be it has to be very relevant. Like it would be weird to promote, I don't know, software through influencers, but
yes.
I mean, even beauty, I would question beauty, right? Because like, don't you wear, again, naive, I'm a dude, I don't wear makeup, but don't you wear makeup to like be outside and be seen by people? So why would you have a beauty influencer selling makeup at a time when everybody's indoors? So I think I agree with you, Tim, generally more inventory on the ad side, I guess, but it's not everybody going to benefit. I think depends.
Okay, so I'm a dude, but I will answer you because my wife is a makeup artist and I know a thing or two about those things. So for makeup, and like I'm not sure if we should go that deep into this specific industry, but because you asked that question, I will answer it. For makeup, because women stay at home, they actually have time to experiment with their makeup, because makeup is not just like put something on your face and you suddenly look beautiful. You like there are techniques, like people get paid to like enhance the beauty of someone's face. So it is like, actually, this is a good time while you sit at home and you have free time. You can order those products online. You don't have to go anywhere. You can experiment like what works for you, which colors, blah, 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 because this is actually very difficult.
Yeah, I guess positioning at least has to change. You can't just be selling business as usual. And now that there's more ad inventory, just pay more to get, it's like, okay, I can still sell makeup, but now there's a new use case that I can properly do a pricing and packaging change and take advantage of it. So I think,
yeah, of course,
you have audiences that are affected by the current situation. How do you address the elephant in the room in all of your comms where you're like, hey, this is happening, I want to like really just address it right away? Do you dance around it? What has been your approach? What has been the conversations within your companies regarding on how close you go to the topic at hand?
Okay, so I'll start, and this is a good time to say that what I'm about to say is not necessarily what the company thinks, but my personal perspective around messaging is that something we discussed before starting this call, the use of the coronavirus thing. So my personal perspective as a marketer, I feel that if we specifically use that word in our marketing communications, it would look like we're trying to get into the hype. So at Ahrefs, we avoided that word. And I'm not saying it's because specifically for that reasons. I'm just saying like what I feel about this word. I feel like a lot of people are sending those emails. I've got so many emails from different companies with like COVID in them, and like they're saying how they care about blah, blah, blah. I don't know, it just feels like ingenuine to me. So, and while everyone is using that word, it just feels like with messages about the virus and how you're addressing it, you're just jumping on the same train and you're just trying to generate hype. That's my opinion.
Okay. So when you guys do emails, I guess you don't send an email that says, here's what we're doing, here's how we're helping you. I mean, where do you need to
So I believe
recognize that?
what we did, I will tell you what we did specifically, but I wouldn't explain why exactly we did it like this, because it was first and foremost the idea of our CEO and founder Dmitry. So what we did is that because a lot of people are in difficult situation, we saw that a lot of people are canceling their accounts because they're saying that they're lost clients or their traffic is going down, so they cannot afford to pay monthly for Ahrefs, and they were asking for some discounts and such. And we had like to support them. It is like just the right thing to do. So instead of like talking about the coronavirus and sending those emails, what we did right now, as of today, we created a message on our dashboard. So when you log into Ahrefs, there's a message that we see that in our industry, people are like getting in difficult situations. Their businesses are suffering. So we're trying to support them by giving no questions asked extensions of their account. So that's it. This is our way to help people. This is what our CEO and founder Dmitry has suggested. Everyone has agreed with him, because like it would actually, like, if you're offering 30 days extensions to like tens of thousands of customers, it would impact your revenue and it would impact like annual bonuses and such. So yeah, we all agreed that like we are okay to give up like part of our own salaries, knowing that it will help our customers. So we created that message, and actually we also created a button for people who think they don't need it, so they can their business will be okay without our help. And actually quite a few people are clicking that button, like, thanks, but I will, like, my business should stay afloat during these times. So yeah, some people are taking the offer, some people are denying free offer of extension. Yeah, we have a lot of amazing customers. I'm super happy to know that we have such people as our customers. Yeah, they click the button, I'm okay for now, like support others.
That's cool. So just keep it really close to product value, I guess, and don't be seen as tapping into the trend. That's the approach you guys are taking. Okay.
Yeah, it's not that we're trying to jump on the hype of coronavirus and such. It's just about the fact that businesses are getting hit, and some of these businesses are relying on Ahrefs to stay operational.
Okay.
And what we can do is we can give them like an extension to keep them running for a while, and they could support their customers in their turn. So yeah, it's not about like hype. It's about like genuinely, we see that people are canceling their accounts, that people are asking for discounts. So we offer them this solution.
Yeah. Simon, I guess it's a bit different for you, but how does this comms and messaging apply?
Yeah, I think rather than commenting on our exact response, because that's a moving piece and not something I can talk too much about, I think in general terms, obviously apply to us as well. I think my internal prioritization has been first to think about reactive communications. So rather than statements out, first get a sense of what's coming in. So customer service, social media, store staff, even our own staff in the office, because everyone around us are consumers and we are consumers ourselves as well, right? What's coming in? So actually the questions that were coming in were quite different from necessarily what we could be proactively communicating about. When our stores were still open, it was things around, what steps are you taking to keep your stores safe and clean and things like that. Okay, then that gives us a clue that we might need to communicate about that. So we think a lot about, or I think, again, let's keep it general. Companies should think a lot about what kind of statements do you have ready for your CS teams, social teams, in terms of reactive statements. Yeah. On proactive communications, I shared Tim's view completely. Like, I got both in my work inbox and in my personal inbox dozens of emails from all sorts of companies I don't know about what they're doing about this situation. I'm like, this is a beautiful occasion to unsubscribe from all of these. I have no idea where you got my information from, and it's entirely irrelevant. I would say we are all, like, at the end of the day, I'm a consumer myself. And here's how I know I feel is the news are getting a bit too much from me. Like, I've in the beginning, it was really not a problem, but now, reading about it from morning till night, all the time, I don't need brands to also talk to me about this in general terms. So I think we also have a bit of a responsibility to think this is going to stick around for a while. Yep. Maybe it's okay that we are not top of mind for our customer every freaking day right now.
Yep. So, okay, I'm a marketer who is having to deal with the situation, and there's a huge drop in traffic and my business isn't such that we can think about let's help our customers. We just have to figure out how to get this traffic slump not curving off and falling off a cliff. A marketer comes to you with that question, how would you answer it, or how would you think about answering that question? I have a bunch of traffic. It fell off a cliff. I need help. My CEO was like, dude, get this number back up. I don't care.
Right. Okay, maybe to take the funny thing is the metric of traffic is so far from what I normally look at.
Okay.
Like I would
take a proxy that's similar to, yeah.
Because I think what I would start with is and by the way, if anybody is sitting out there with that situation, I think we have all we're all in this together, and
yeah.
we have to figure it out. I would say first is try and traffic is always a proxy for people who can take decisions, right? They can take a purchase decision and not take a purchase decision. Then you have some sort of a funnel and you think about some conversion rates and so on. So in the end, it's all about your customers. I would say if your business has gone to zero, you need to talk to some of your existing customers to figure out what changed about their sentiment. If it has just started to drop, what I would look at is really where the ones that are still coming, where are they going? So I can see that, for example, in my own context is what I'm looking at a lot right now is like, for example, what has shifted in terms of price points, categories. We talked a bit about makeup before, but for example, now we have a huge surge in interest about self-care and skincare and things like that. So that gives clues already. If your traffic for me is hard to tell, because for me that is kind of an inanimate thing that for me would always just be a proxy to more or less customer demand. And then the first thing would just be to drill into and figure out what has changed in the sentiment. What I'm a big fan of, and I've been using this in all of my different roles with this company, is wherever you go, however big your business is, call 10 customers. Like we look at so many dashboards and get so much quantitative data, especially right now when it's a thing that is driven more by emotions than logic. I feel like 10 times 15 minutes on a phone call, you probably have a pretty decent understanding about what's going on. If you have your CEO coming down on you like this, and you're looking at budgets in particular, in terms of how they are looking against it, I think maybe one argument you could help bring back is that all things considered, while you figure this strategy out, now is a pretty excellent time to figure out where your marginal returns curve for your marketing spend actually was. Meaning the dollars you're cutting are not the smartest dollar. Think about your AdWords spend, right? The first thing you would spend $1 on is not the same thing you would spend dollar number 100,000 every month on. You're basically looking for marginal opportunity all the time. So I think there can be, it's a storm. It's not something we've been in ever before, but actually by now having these unique set of circumstances where you can look at, what happens if I cut my marketing spend by half or my media spend by half? Do I actually see a half in traffic, or do I see a drop off of 15%? And what would that teach me about that curve that we can use to be hopefully in a better shape when we come back? So I think the answer would be in two parts. Try and figure out what is the sentiment that's leading to that traffic change, because it's always people making decisions, either for themselves or for their company. And then second, try and take these very unique circumstances to figure out something about your marginal returns curve, particularly for performance marketing. I think is a very interesting time to figure out what actually happens if I cut my spend in half. Does my traffic actually half, or is it a marginal drop?
Donations to Google and Mark Zuckerberg every month. Do they actually result in anything? That's a great point. Tim, somebody comes up to you and asks you this.
Well, to be honest, I think that what happens right now in the world is just like dominoes falling one after another. And essentially, you can do nothing about it. So if your traffic is going down, you cannot magically lift it. Like you cannot do anything you couldn't do before that thing happened. Unless, of course, you start publishing articles about coronavirus and like get all the hype. But this is not helping your business. This is just like getting traffic over hype. So yeah, it's natural. Everything is going down. Businesses are being closed. People sit home, don't spend money. So eventually domino effect, whatever industry you're in, it will eventually reach you. So you can only like embrace this. And yeah, great advice about figuring out what was the most effective things that you were doing and focus on them, like drop everything else if you have restrictions with your budget. And yeah, I would also try, like as a manager, I would try everything in my power to not let anyone go, to make sure that all my employees, even if their area of expertise will not be needed for the next like 3 to 4 months, I would refocus them on those things that we know that are effective. So yeah,
That's
like
great.
maybe buy them some training, because a lot of things in marketing are actually not rocket science. You can learn a marketing skill in a week. So basically, if you want like someone to take care of AdWords, like take a weekly course and you'll be quite good at it. So same with content. I think that a few like basic copywriting courses and you would be writing content better than most people. By the way, shameless plug, we released our course on blogging for business for free, exactly for this purpose, so that people who sit at home and they like, again, if you have kind of brick and mortar business and you were slowly developing it online, but you didn't have enough time because you had to manage all the like bells and whistles, and now you're sitting at home, your store is closed, it's a good time to actually work on your content, work on your website, figure out what kind of SEO issues you have. And I'm feeling that I'm like promoting ourselves too much, but they're just how things work online. If you want to improve your business online, you have to work on your website. And I'm not necessarily saying even about Ahrefs, because there are many other tools. Set up your email marketing, work on your conversion rate. So it's not just SEO. Like learn that stuff, optimize the website, and maybe even if today the traffic is low, you can spend your time optimizing the online part of your business. And by the time economy goes back up and you reopen your store and like resume your operations, you will have a website and you will have a lot of content that will be attracting you additional customers.
Yeah.
So probably you can use that time for good while your business is closed. You can focus on the online part and build the foundation for future growth for when the economy goes back to normal.
Yeah, I love the way you guys thought about it. And I think one of the things I'm realizing about a lot of the questions is they're assuming that it's a business as usual thing. It's like, oh, how do I just do more of what I was doing before? But you have to realize like you're playing a new game now. And so the question isn't like, how do I get better at SEO? How do I get better at AdWords? It's like, no, like I think what Simon said at the beginning, it's like, think of yourself as business impact. And Tim, I love what you said about this is not the time necessarily to just be writing a bunch of content. Maybe it's investing for the future, and that's the smartest use of your time. So a couple of things that I saw that just put me in this mindset of this is not business as usual is there's a dry cleaning delivery service that I use, dry cleaning and delivery and pickup. And they're obviously like screwed right now because nobody's going to work, so they don't need dry cleaning and all those kind of things, not going out to parties. And so what they did was, hey, strategic partnerships, like we talked about earlier, they partnered up with restaurants and like food distributors that are also hurting because everything's closed. And now they're like creating this new product, which is like health delivery. So they'll do like fruits and vegetables and like essentials. And now they're using the dry cleaning companies using their excess delivery capacity. And now they're buying a bunch of like food from these wholesalers. And now they're both getting a chance to benefit. So that's an example of how I think we are going to see a lot of innovation in business models and how businesses restructure themselves. And as marketers, I think it's our job to make sure we're thinking along those lines and not just staying in like the silos that we have been before the situation, because we're just not going to get anywhere if you're just doing more of the old game, right? We have just a few more minutes left, and I want to address this last question because I feel like there were a few of these, and they probably need to hear a bunch of thoughts right now. So if you didn't have a job right now, or if you're preparing to be out of work soon, as a marketer, what would you be doing? How would you advise somebody who's facing the situation?
I think, have ideas?
Yeah, so Tim, I think your last question probably answered it a bit. So it's probably investing in yourself, because there's a lot of companies, Ahrefs aside, who are turning a lot of their paid offerings for free, or at least discounting them heavily because this is a time to like invent and create. So that's one of the things that I would start with. I'm seeing a lot of people give advice of like, hey, start a podcast, start a YouTube channel. Yeah, I mean, somebody, for example, cold emails you or sends you a LinkedIn message like, hey, I have some experience in marketing, but I think I'm going to get laid off, or my company's not doing well. What do you think I should do to prepare myself, or how should I think about my career?
So I think, first of all, for anybody who's facing that situation now or will face it in the future, that's tough as hell and not easy for anyone. This piece of advice, I think, will not apply in all types of companies. But when you look at the structural impact of this situation, it's probably likely to be having some impact the next couple of years, but it's probably bound to be the worst for the next sort of 4 to 6 months. And so I think a lot of companies are modeling their revenues after that sort of time frame. And so when layoffs come, if it's anything that this person has a prior knowledge to, I think it's interesting to try and turn that kind of cash flow optimization dynamic on its head and work with your employer to see if you could go on reduced time for a few months. Could you go on 80% time, 60% time? Do you have the ability to defer your salary for a little bit? Because at the end of the day, the current scenario is that the economy should, with all the stimulus that's coming, return to somewhat normalcy at some point, even though it can look almost impossible right now. But the main problem that companies have is the immediate cash flow draw from paying salaries. So if there's anything you can do to proactively try and adjust that line for them, or the timing of that line, I think it's worth a shot at the very least. Although I realize in many companies this would just not be an option, because either you're so big that it's coming out of nowhere, or you're so small that the cash is pay you at all, whatever it might be. But there might be some companies where having that proactive dialogue with your boss or your employer maybe could be helpful.
Yeah, interesting.
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure if getting fired during this time, like professionally speaking, I'm not speaking about like the overall situation. Of course, like during this time, getting fired sucks. But professionally speaking, it's not that much different from getting fired at any other time. So for example, one of our competitors a few years ago, their company was suffering and they had to lay off like 1/3 of their personnel or anything like that. That still sucks. You got cut, you got fired, your job, your profession is no longer needed at that company. Of course, during that time, it would be harder to find a job, because if you were cut from a certain company because your services are not that impactful as of today, then it's unlikely that you're going to get hired at some other company that would need your services right now, because the whole economy is going down. So like it is easier, but essentially the fundamentals are still the same. If you got cut, it means that your skills are not as essential for the company, so you have to work on upgrading them. So the advice is still the same. You have to be looking for new jobs and you have to be upgrading your skills. Actually, you should be doing it all the time. But yeah, I don't know how this helps. I'm just saying that even people who won't lose jobs today, who knows what happens like in a month or two. So like we discussed, with all the companies opening their courses and opening different learning materials, at least dig into this, see what kind of directions you can go to upgrade your knowledge, and to make sure that your position will be in demand. So
yeah, I like that. So maybe we'll wrap it up there. So Simon, let me just recap your answer there, because I thought it was, coming back to that business thing. So don't just think of yourself as being in the marketing team. Think of yourself as being part of the business. And if the reason you're getting laid off is because of some cash flow consideration, is there some way you can mitigate that? Delayed salary, pay me later, worker to reduce salary, that kind of thing. And Tim, what you're saying,
I think, yeah, I really think in particular, the one to consider is in many marketing teams, I do believe, because of the drawdown of budgets for the time being, it's a little bit of like, let's pull down the sails and, slowly go through the storm and sort of just do nothing, which is still a lot of work. I think what could be an argument is, let me take all Fridays off, or let me take all Thursdays and Fridays off, and then you reduce my salary 20 or 40% or something like that. I think those are the types of moves can just immediately change this equation a whole lot in many different types of businesses. Mm-hmm. And while like Tim, I think it's a fantastic point you have with always be upskilling yourself, and now is particularly the time you have the hours for it. The point around losing your job being reflective of the relative value of your skills to that company can sometimes hold true, but in other instances not at all. In other instances, like look at the hospitality industry, the furloughs they're going through. When you are hired, laying off 2/3 of your corporate staff, it's not because they are not valuable right now, it's because you cannot pay salaries next month. So there are some industries where the revenue line has decreased so much that you simply cannot pay next month. It's kind of unprecedented. But in those cases, I think certainly if you can upskill yourself, start yesterday. But if you get that kind of letter, I would try and, instead of letting it further be weight on my shoulders or bring me negativity, say that for better or worse, it was probably the more of the situation than your contribution to it.
For sure.
Necessary.
And just on Tim's point of upskilling, his blogging course is awesome. So just free plug there. It's really good. You should go get it while it's still free. And I'll end with, the way I think about job searching is, it's not just about your skill and your own capability, which is certainly very important, but it's a function of your exposure to the job market. So I totally echo all those people who are like, yes, start a podcast, yes, start a blog, start a YouTube page, start an Instagram, whatever. Now is the time to invent and create and experiment. And who knows, like you could be the one innovating on virtual events, which is a topic sadly we didn't get to today. But basically, I think the answer for virtual events is everybody's doing this webinar. There's like 3 heads on a Zoom call being recorded and YouTubing. I think if you look at this 6 months from now, we will all look back and be like, what the hell were these guys doing? I can't believe they got away with this. Because it's going to be like studios. There's either like drones or VR, AR. I think we're in for a crazy next little while. So I think it's going to be very interesting. I want to thank you guys for joining me. Thanks for spending your lunch break with me and about a few dozen people who joined on the live. So thanks for all the people who joined on the live as well. I am going to follow up with some of the questions that we didn't get to. So hopefully if we have any additional insights there, I'll be happy to share that with the people who are watching the recording. All right, guys. Tim, Simon, thank you again. Everybody watching. Cheers.
Be safe.
Enjoy your day. Stay safe. Stay sane. Don't go crazy away from home. Cheers, y'all. Take care.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.